Hello and welcome. You're watching France 24 and this is Eye on Africa, our top stories. Kenyan president unveils his new cabinet following weeks of deadly anti-government protests. William Ruto says his country is in urgently need of transformation. Airports, banking and healthcare all hit by a massive tech failure. When Microsoft sneezes, the world catches a cold, including in South Africa, where customers struggled to get access to their bank account. Ghana cocoa output is only half of average, with harvest almost complete. The world's second largest grower has been hit with swollen shoot disease. Kenya has been rocked by a month of sometimes deadly protests. They began as peaceful rallies against controversial tax hikes, but morphed into a wider anti-government campaign calling for Ruto to go. Hoping to ease the crisis, President William Ruto has unveiled this Friday a new partial cabinet as he works to create a broad-based government.
I have started the process of forming a new broad-based cabinet to assist in driving the urgently needed and irreversible transformation of our country.
And our correspondent Olivia Bizot has more from Nairobi.
In his speech, Kenya's President William Ruto announced a plan to form a new broad-based government. However, 6 of the 11 ministers Ruto has named are from the cabinet he sacked just last week. The mass firing came after intense pressure from protesters. The demonstrations began last month against an unpopular tax bill, which Ruto has since withdrawn. But the rallies have continued, evolving into broader anger over bad governance, corruption and police violence. Since the beginning of the protests, at least 50 people have been killed. That's according to the National Commission on Human Rights. Kenyans had planned to take to the streets again on Thursday of this week, but after the police imposed a ban on demonstrations, they struggled to take off. A Kenyan court has since lifted that ban. On social media, Kenyans are definitely not happy. They want the system to change, and many of them are angry that Ruto has just recycled cabinet ministers in his new or not so new government. They're planning to take to the streets once again next Tuesday.
Now, airports, banking, healthcare, a major tech failure hit these industries across the world. Cybersecurity firm CrowdStrike says a defect in one of its software updates hit Windows operating systems. In South Africa, at least 2 major banks experienced service disruptions. Customers complaining they were not able to make payments using their bank cards at grocery stores and gas stations or use ATMs. So what happened? Joining us from London is Tony Tiyu. He's a technology expert. Tony Tiyu, welcome to our program. Can you please first explain how did this major glitch come to happen?
Effectively, first of all, thank you for having me. So the major glitch was actually caused by a flawed update of a software called CrowdStrike. That's the antivirus software, which is specifically designed to protect Microsoft Windows devices. And what happened is this update included a defect that impacted Windows PCs, and that led to widespread IT outages. But according to them, so the issue was actually isolated and it's not a security or cyber attack. So we're talking about a single rogue file here that needed to be deleted. So that's what the issue was, or is.
So I gave the example of South Africa. Were there other African countries that were impacted?
Yeah, it's fair to say that, yes, we talk clearly about South Africa because they've mentioned that. But I firmly believe that other countries were impacted. I can give you an example of myself, for example. Part of my team is actually based in Kenya. And I know today I was actually meant to do a transaction to a team member, and I just couldn't do it. But initially, I couldn't understand why. Obviously, when I came out to understand the widespread IT outage, so I knew obviously where it was coming from. And that's not surprising, right? Because when we look at the kind of sector that have been impacted, so we're talking about a global impact. So we're talking about airport and airlines, with many cancellations we've seen in major airports, London, Tokyo, Amsterdam. You surely have the same in Africa, right? So because Africa is not immune. banking and healthcare, I've just mentioned about that. So payment be rejected, rail services, emergencies. So I think it's not difficult to understand that other countries would have been affected, on top of South Africa.
So this glitch, we can say, kind of showed the vulnerability of the world, or connected world. What about the vulnerability of the continent?
Yeah, we're living today in a very much globalized world, isn't it, right? And you say that, when Microsoft sneezes, obviously the world catch cold, and that's the same as well for Africa. So the level of vulnerability here is quite significant because we're talking about interconnected system. Many critical services, transportation, healthcare, banking, mention that they rely on IT systems. So if you have a failure in one of those systems, it will cascade in all those other sectors, but also our countries. So we all depend on those major software providers. So, when you have a software provider like, CrowdStrike for cybersecurity, so if there was an issue, it would affect numerous organizations and services simultaneously. And the recovery is complex. That's what we've seen, right? So you need many interventions. So clearly Africa is also impacted. But I would say maybe to a lesser extent, for the simple reason that the digital infrastructure in Africa is not as large and robust as other continents. So where many countries and many services in Africa still rely, let's say, on analog system, so where we have to do things, handwritten. So in here, clearly, obviously, it seems to have been an advantage. So I would say, yes, Africa is vulnerable to those issues that we see globally, but maybe to a lesser extent because the digital infrastructure is not as widespread as the rest of the other continent.
Well, thank you, Tony, to you to explain in layman terms what happened. Thank you very much for your intervention.
It was a pleasure.
Now, cocoa production in Ghana is now reported to be half of the average seasonal output as at June, with days to the end of the harvest season. The West African nation is the world's second largest producer of the crop, and continued slump in its cocoa harvests have helped drive up the world market price. So, what had led to this drop? Our Ghana correspondent Justice Baidu has been finding out.
Figures from Ghana's Cocoa Board showed that production was currently around 429,323 metric tons against an expected 800 metric tons for the entire year. Cocoa production in Ghana has been on a constant slump over the last 3 years. Farmers of the crop have consistently complained about unfavorable weather, bad pricing from the government, among others.
It's like cocoa farming is a good business, but we are not getting the benefit that we're supposed to get. Because right now, the yield, we are getting some yield, which because of the weather, the yield is not good for us. But this time the weather is very dry. We are not getting much yield. But the price too is very low.
Cocoa production plays a critical role in Ghana's economy, contributing up to 15% to the country's GDP. Ghana is currently going through rough times with its economy.
Most of these farmers solely rely on cocoa production to meet their daily needs. So once this cocoa is not coming out, it means that their livelihood or their income is hampered, except for a few occasions where some farmers have some alternative livelihoods, but that is in the lower majority or in the lower ebb of cocoa farmers.
Ivory Coast, Ghana's West African neighbor, along with whom it produces up to 60% of global cocoa produce every year, is also facing similar challenges.
Paris Games are fast approaching. Rosemary Wenjeru is Kenya's Olympic gold marathon hopeful this year. Our team followed her throughout her training ahead of the Games. In Eton, the town is full of runners hoping to achieve glory, but those who succeed are few and far between. Rosemary Wenjeru has given away some of her prize money to the community with the objective of making it easier for other Kenyans to compete. Olivia Bizot and Bastien Renouille.
It's the second training session of the day for Rosemary and her so-called boys.
This helps because you feel you are motivated running with them than to run alone. When I run races like Tokyo, maybe Berlin, and I know I am not alone. They got my back.
Rosemary's team is made up of athletes who dream of becoming Olympians themselves. Running in the footsteps of a champion helps them develop key ingredients for success, like grit and discipline.
We are together like morning run and evening training. But track session and long runs, we separate from there.
Everyone in the team has their own training program, but they do a lot more than just run.
We train together, we take food together, and we stay together. Yes.
Rosemary has used her prize money to build this home for herself and this community space for her runners.
So they stay here. It's important to help the community so they can be champions and at the same time to help their families.
Kennedy Chelimo has been living here for a year and a half.
This is my room. I used to relax, sleep at night, even the day I used to relax here. Yes. I put it down there. Yes. This is my clothes. This is my friend, because we normally stay with them. We have a one room. So I like here. Yes, it is fitting me. Yeah, I love to stay here and train. I'm stable being here.
The prize money for a major marathon win is around €100,000. That's 50 times the average annual income in Kenya.
Their life is not easy in Kenya, especially maybe some families. So running helps a lot. That gives me to make more effort and to aim to win many races. So I can get a lot and to be able to help myself and my family back home and to help the boys and the others.
And that concludes this edition of Eye on Africa. Thank you for watching.